Mike. There we go. So call this meeting to order. I'll start by saying, in the spirit of respect, authenticity, and reconciliation, the town of Slave Lake honors and acknowledges that we are situated on the traditional lands of the Sauridge First Nation within Treaty 8 territory, home to Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit peoples who have occupied these lands since time immemorial. We have our agenda in front of us. Is there any changes to the agenda? Sorry, Councillor Ferguson.
Motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. So we have minutes in our package starting on page 3 from the committee of whole meeting on August 9th. Any changes or clarifications in regards to those minutes? Councillor Ward.
I'll make a motion to accept the committee of the whole meeting of council August 9th, 2022 as presented.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Then we have the regular meeting from August 16th on page 12 in our package. Any issues? Different format with the watermark in it. Looks impressive. I like it. Councillor Brandel.
I will make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes of Tuesday, August 16th as presented.
Discussion? All the question those in favor? That's carried. Question period. This is kind of an open format for CAO to throw out anything that's really important they want to throw out, or a council to throw any pieces out there. Going once. Councillor Ferguson.
Just a question on the status of the construction for Rennie Hall Plaza South, just south of Rennie Hall Plaza there where it's torn up. Is there a timeline for that?
You know what, I might defer to our project manager maybe to answer this question better.
Yeah, and Kush, do you want to come use the mic, please? So what does that world look like?
So contractor, before completing the North Plaza, they said that, their plan is to come back after the long weekend and start on the South Plaza. I had a conversation this morning. They are bringing in a whole operator tomorrow, but they want to fix some work at the swale by the Caribou Trail. They have slopes that are exposed, so they just want to backfill along the slopes, and then they will jump onto South Plaza and then start work for excavating the base of the curb in order to form and then pour the curb. And then once the curb is cured, probably take 2-3 days, they will start pouring the surface.
So anticipated end date would be before the end of the month.
For sure. Yes.
Okay. So let's just finish up that project. So
Yep.
light standards there.
Light standards there. The controller that controls the light is getting shipped on 15th of September. So once it shows up here, then we will go out and install the lights. We have received the lights.
Okay, and we have some other pieces that are going in there.
Yeah, and we have those boulders that goes by the tree.
Yeah.
Boulders, we just processed the payment today, and it's a company from Edmonton. So we'll go out and haul those boulders out sometime this week and start complete installation very soon.
Okay.
And then the very last portion left would be the center art piece. So once this contractor is out there doing the South Plaza, they have to pour a pony wall. And once the pony wall is poured, they will, the designer is currently preparing a package for council to look at 2 or 3 different options. And once an option is picked, then they will fabricate, and then it's just bolted on top of the pony wall.
Okay.
Yeah.
So realistically, still on track to have all that done this
Yeah,
season.
hopefully it will be all done for sure before.
Because bigger burning question then is what happens on the east portion.
So east portion, so we reached out to another company called Duro Contracting. They are the concrete contractors who's coming for 3rd Street Southwest to complete the curb and gutter installation, including sidewalks. So he was out here just before the long weekend on Thursday. He looked at the site. He said that it's pretty straightforward. Those guys also, they work as raiders. They have like big crews that they roll out with. But as it's really close to the businesses, they said that it's going to take them at least 4 to 6 weeks to complete it. Having said that, the temperatures are changing really quick here. So me and Roland are going to give a call to the CCRF grant tomorrow, possibly, just to see if, if a grant extension is possible. All the MSP grant would definitely be spent by the end of this year. But that CCRF portion, that additional $500,000 that we got this year, if they can extend it up to next year, sometime end of June or end of July, then we can complete that East Plaza by then.
So realistically, what we're looking at is potentially doing the East Plaza next year.
Yes, just because the temperatures are just dropping really quick.
Okay. Other questions? Counselor Randall.
That was my question.
Okay, Counselor Ward.
What's the current expiry of the grant, the 500,000, the additional?
The end date was end of December this year.
Okay. Any other questions? What's the anticipated end date on third?
Third, with this year's road restoration, which would be only to cap on top of the trench and completing the concrete installation of water line. I think we are expecting as per the schedule we last received on the last progress meeting was mid to late October.
So mid to late October, we'll have the cap on it.
Yes,
And then ideally we do a whole surfacing next year.
next year, yes.
Okay.
And
Okay,
same with lift station C force main.
okay.
Yeah.
Counselor Hughes.
Just while we're on this topic, can you give a quick update about Sixth Avenue roadwork as well? How are things going there?
Sixth Avenue Northwest, right? So
Northwest,
that's a
yeah.
lift station C force main.
Yeah.
So contractor has completed at least 60% of the pipe is already in the ground right now. The last 40% is left, including the last tie into the lift station C. And they are expecting it's going to take them at least 6 more weeks to complete the last portion of it, complete the tie-in, and then there will be asphalt cap going on it as well.
So theoretically, most of the stuff should be wrapped up here before the end of October
Yes.
and we're moving ahead. Okay.
Yes.
What about the splash park?
Splash Park, we started the demo of the existing asphalt pad today. The PlayQuest recreation is coming with their subcontractors next Monday to start installation. We have received from the parts, we have received the control cabinet that controls the water features, and all the underground piping that goes under the concrete pad has already been received. So they plan to install the control box, install the underground piping, including the concrete pad. And then if the rest of the equipment shows up that's above ground, then they will install it. If not, then they will just cap it at the concrete level, and then they will come back next spring and install it.
Okay. So theoretically, next spring, water park should be open. and-
Yes.
What about the controller at the old park?
I think it's still working, isn't it?
It is, but I thought when we watched.
But I mean, like, I'm not in the loop from them. I think Jill and Gary were.
Okay, I
were-
was just
yeah.
curious if it was the same
Yeah.
contractor doing that work. Okay. Any other questions? As I see none. Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. We'll jump into reports and new business. So we have checks over 50,000.
Good evening, your worship and members of council. Purpose of tonight's report is just to report checks in excess of 50,000 that have been written from April 1st to August 5th, 2022. So far, there's been 10 checks / EFTs payments in excess of 50,000. 5 checks relating to capital projects have been issued. 1 debenture payment to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. 1 payment for the resurfacing of Barton Park. The second quarter RCMP invoice and a requisition to the Slave Lake Regional Housing Authority. 7 checks relating to payroll remittances totaled 335,000 for the period, and the list of checks, the dates are written and amounts are attached to this report.
Okay, questions from council? Going once, going twice. Counselor Adams.
I'd like to make a motion that council accepts the report for checks over $50,000 from April 1st, to August 5th, 2022 as information.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? As carried. Okay, let's get into a discussion about lane contributions. Hey,
For the record that I'm excusing myself from this discussion.
okay,
I as well.
okay. 1, 2, yeah, we still got quorum.
I'm up.
All right.
Okay, Lori, floor is yours.
All right, your worship and members of council, this report is about lane contributions for the Slave Lake Koinonia Christian School Society. The report, the request is to consider waiving the lane contributions. I've given you in the background the subject lands because the lands have been consolidated and the legal land descriptions have changed. So to help you with some context, the subject properties Plan 142 1046 Block 20 Lot 14, which is currently the Christian School and was formerly the Fish and Wildlife Building. So on March 4th of 2014, council approved the realignment and redevelopment of the entire length of lane located between 4th Ave and 6th Ave Northeast, and I've attached maps for you in the report. The first motion that was made by council reads that council approves the realignment and redevelopment of the entire length of Town Lane located between 4th and 6th. Total costs of the stormwater system portion of the project are to be split equally between the provincial government lots and the Points West site. The total costs associated with the redevelopment of the lane shall be split between 3 lots based on frontage. The 3 lots are described as the Points West site and the 2 provincial government lots. And the total costs associated with the realignment of the lane shall be paid by the town of Slave Lake. The second motion states that the total project costs attributed to the 2 provincial government lots shall be established as a future development charge that will be due and payable upon application for a subdivision or development permit for these 2 lots. The total costs attributed to the Points West site will be established and formalized in a development agreement, which it was. A third motion states that council agrees to acquire the necessary lands from the Northwest 3172-5 west of the 5th and proceed with construction of an east-west portion of the fire lane that the Points West Slave Lake Limited will contribute toward half of that construction cost. So based on council's motions of those dates, a note was placed in the land-based files for the 2 GOA sites to notify and inform the planning department of contributions if a subdivision or development were to proceed. Points West Living paid their contributions to both the lane and the fire lane as per their agreement, and only the contributions from the 2 GOA sites remain outstanding. The total amount attributed to the subject lands is $84,649.50. We also checked the land-based files to see if the province of Alberta was informed with respect to the future contributions, and we were unable to locate a letter. We are also not aware if there were discussions between council or administration with the GOA, as there was quite a bit of discussion going back and forth between town administration and the province during that whole land acquisition process. In February of 2020, the Christian School purchased the subject lands from the province, and in April, title for the subject lands was changed to the Christian School Society. It's worthy of note that when the school purchased the lands from the province, the town was not requested to provide a letter of compliance or any other comment. We were not asked to provide information regarding outstanding contributions or levies of any kind. And further, as the town was not involved in the land conveyancing process for the subject lands, we are not aware of any disclosures made by the landowner to the purchaser. It's also worthy of note that the planning department has been sending letters to the local law offices for at least 10 years, advising about offsite levies and developer contributions. This was done to address several different things. First, the town cannot register a caveat on the lands, advising future purchases that there may be an outstanding levy or contribution owed to the town. Second, so in other words, no way to notify them without them contacting us. Second, a letter of compliance and a tax certificate, which are typical documents provided during land conveyancing, do not address levies or contributions. And further, the content and structure of these documents is recommended by our legal counsel based on the regulations of the MGA. And as such, these documents don't contain information not pertinent to taxes in the case of a tax certificate or land use in the case of a compliance certificate. And third, a property file history search, which is often requested during the land conveyancing process, also does not address levies or contributions, but only addresses historical search regarding bylaw infractions, site contamination, landfills, fuel tanks, etc. To get that information regarding levies and contributions, the lawyer must contact the planning department and request that information specifically, which is why these letters have been going to the law offices. So in March of 2023, three plan amendments were passed by council, amendments to the municipal development plan, the downtown plan, and the land use bylaw to rezone the subject lands to institutional to allow the school to operate from that site. Legal counsel from the Christian school states the town should have notified them of the lien contributions at that time. Currently, the zoning process does not require us to pull the land-based file to process the application. In addition, rezoning processes do not trigger the requirement to pay. However, our process does require the development officer to review the land-based file upon receipt for an application of subdivision or development, which is typical or standard within the industry. These are the triggering events outlined in the MGA. On September 27, 2021, the planning department issued a development permit for the renovation and subsequent occupancy of the school building. At that time, the Christian School Society applied for the permit. The development officer should have pulled and reviewed the applicable land-based file and then should have notified the landowner of the requirement to pay contributions prior to the issuance of the permit. This was missed and the need to pay the contributions was not identified until we were in the process of closing the development permit file and refunding the development deposit. And at that time, the interim director of planning and development then had a conversation with the acting CAO to determine the appropriate course of action, considering the events and how they unfolded. So a letter was forwarded to the Christian school requesting payment of the contributions in the amount of $84,649.50, and also outlined their options to request council to consider waiving the contributions. So I wish to point out that there is due diligence requirement on both parties involved, and that applying for a rezoning application doesn't constitute due diligence with respect to land conveyancing, especially since the rezoning applications came 6 weeks after the acquisition was complete. Further, the local offices have been receiving annual letters from the planning department for the past decade, outlining the need to request information regarding offsite levies and contributions from the planning department. This request was never received from the Christian School Society or from Matthew Herniak LLP during the land conveyancing process. The planning department is often not involved in land conveyancing matters, and most we are not even aware of when these transactions take place. This is especially true since more real estate transactions take place with title insurance rather than using the compliance process. Further, it's not reasonable to expect that these processes with other processes, within the department would trigger the requirement to notify the landowners and developers about outstanding levies and contributions. The planning department took steps to notify the local law offices about these issues by sending annual letters regarding off-site levies and contributions. That said, the planning department was remiss in notifying the landowner during the development permit process, so we do share some of the responsibility with respect to the communication of this information. We'd like to offer two options. Council could agree to waive the lien contributions for the school, and council could require them to be paid by the school. I did have discussions with the Director of Finance, and he indicates that the town is not carrying a loan for the project. So our recommendation is we recognize that these contributions are significant, and that if the landowner was unaware, the revelation would have come as quite a shock. That said, due diligence is required on behalf of a land purchaser and their legal counsel, and not just the town of Slave Lake. There is most certainly an element of buyer beware. Again, the comment that the contribution was not apportioned to the majority of the benefiting lands is correct. Had the lane project been apportioned to all benefiting lands, the amounts attributed to the subject lands would have been less. And it also appears that the town is not carrying a loan for the lane project, so that helps with respect to recovery of funds. Finally, administration is unable to confirm with any certainty that the province of Alberta was aware of the contributions, and as such, we're recommending council waive them.
Okay,
Questions?
questions from council? Councilor Adams.
Couple general questions, I guess. One is if we went down the path of waiving this, Does this open us up to any litigation from Points West and the amounts they've paid, since they'd be the only ones that have paid on that?
No, developer contributions have already paid. They're considered a negotiation and they're not a requirement under the MGA like offsite levies. So absolutely it doesn't. You can make these
decision you
decisions,
want.
yep, on a case by case basis.
Not to mention it's sold since then, so the developer's not even property owner anymore. Counselor Adams?
How do we ensure that this isn't going to happen in the future? It seems like the process dropped the ball somewhere along the way. And even just not being able to put anything in titles, and there's something you can do with something on title?
You cannot register anything on title unless there's an obligation owed in terms of, it's got to be more than there's a fee. There has to be that's the dominant tenement on title. So there has to be a different obligation. So a development agreement, yes, but this wouldn't require a development agreement. So that I've had this discussion with many councils, and I'm sure Tyler is aware. We've had this discussion, especially about offsite levies. There's no ability to put a caveat on title to notify landowners that there's an outstanding obligation. It's something we've received legal advice on a couple of times, and that never changes unless there's a development agreement in place that you can register that agreement on the title. But once the obligations of the agreement are fulfilled, you have to discharge it.
In
About
reality,
a deferred services agreement or something? Is that possible?
Nope,
Not even that.
nope.
the problem is you can do it with developer who's land, but when it affects the other lands around you, you can't start adding stuff to that.
Nope.
So it,
Which is-
luckily, we don't have a lot of these that are out there.
We don't, and it's why, the planning department took steps over the last decade, or it's more than a decade, to notify lawyers so that we could have these conversations with people before they bought property. So we could tell them, yeah, there will be an offsite levy, or yes, there is an offsite levy and a contribution, because there are properties that are affected by both. So that they know in advance of purchasing the property that that obligation would be triggered by an application for subdivision or development.
But that too only goes so far as long as you use a lawyer in town. If you don't use a lawyer in town, they wouldn't know that either.
Well, that's my question.
That's correct.
How much of this, they did use a local lawyer?
Yes.
If I'm correct, how much of this falls upon them for not providing them with the info? Like, I'd say 99% of it, we could come in late and provide that when
Well,
the permit
and
was pulled, but
another thing you should know is that town of Slave Lake in sending these letters to legal, like that's not standard process either. Most other municipalities, they're in the same boat as us. And I can tell you, they're not sending annual letters to their
that's a courtesy.
legal
more
firm.
than
It's a
anything.
courtesy. It's an extra step we went above and beyond to try to, because, it's quite a shock to get that notification that you have a contribution or an offsite levy. So the idea is to try to help people who are buying property so they don't feel like they've been duped or they're unaware. And now there's this big bill that they're not aware that they have to pay if they want to develop their property.
That's why you hire a lawyer.
Yes.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you for laying everything out so nicely in this report, Lori. It was great to read and go through. I think that the whole situation is just kind of a mixed bag of communication breakdowns and just kind of a cluster mess, really. So that being said, I think given that we don't have an outstanding loan and that this is for a school, I would be comfortable supporting council waiving this charge.
Okay, are you making a motion then?
I would love to, yes.
Feel free.
I move that council waives laying contributions in the amount of $84,649.50 for Plan 1421046, Block 20, Lot 14 of 108 4th Avenue Northwest for the Slave Lake Koinonia Christian School Society.
More discussion, Councillor Adams.
I don't know if my question was fully answered or I kind of missed it, but what are we doing so this doesn't happen in the future and we miss out on $84,000 worth of?
We are, I guess, the only other thing that should have happened there that didn't was the development officer should have pulled out the land-based file and notified. So then the report would have come to you before the permit was issued, because there's no doubt in my mind, they would have been asking for the waiver of the contribution anyway. But that's what should have happened. Like when we get an application for development, the first thing you do is pull the land-based file and you review that to see if there's anything before you issue the permit, and it didn't happen. And the permit went without notification to the landowner.
And you're under the assumption that had we notified them earlier, they'd be coming with the same request, do you think? Because they are a school?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind they would have come with that request.
And at the time, sorry, of the development permit, the transaction had already taken place of ownership.
It
correct?
did,
That's
yeah.
right. So
It was
this wouldn't have
already
been
done.
notified. There was no mechanism to notify them prior to the sale that there's an outstanding levy. So they got into the situation that they got.
They would have just been notified of it sooner before the issuance of the permit, and you would have been looking at the same question, right? Because they didn't know.
So this is where I'm struggling to wrap my head around it, is how do we stop that from happening again? So
It
that's
really
notified
comes
on the
down
sale.
to a situation where the lawyers have to contact the planning department and ask for the information, or the person purchasing the property. It's really, unfortunately, as much as I don't like to say it, it is a buyer beware situation to a certain extent. We can only notify to so much. And we already go above and beyond in that notification
understand.
process.
True. You send letters out all the time, I see.
Yes.
But I guess, is there a standard request so that it's included on these initial requests when the lawyers are asking for the other information, that this would then be made part of it, instead of saying, well, we know this, but we're not going to tell you unless you specifically ask?
No, and it certainly wasn't a situation where we know this and we're not going
Yeah,
to tell
I know,
you.
I get that. I just
Yeah.
meant-
I don't have any form for that. I mean, if I could make it up and send it to them and say, here,
Have to request them first. If they don't
Yes.
request, it doesn't matter what form or what
Yeah.
process or what system.
But they
have.
would have requested the tax notice. They would have requested all that stuff ahead of time, correct?
they would have requested a tax notice. Often they don't request the other stuff. We don't always get a property file history search. We don't always get a compliance request. More often than not, we don't anymore. So they only,
Insurance going through. Yeah,
title
I
insurance
understand.
is the thing that happens there. So
So a question then, can we add a process that there is some kind of piece of paper that goes out with when they request the taxes, that there's a standard letter that goes out that this property may or may not have whatever, please check with the development department?
yes, because I already, when a tax certificate comes in, they ask us, often ask me to determine the size of the property, like parcel area.
But when they send the tax certificate, we send a standard letter? that
You
goes with
could,
it?
it could go with it. It's not part of it. Like, there's a layout accordance with the MGA and what information goes in a tax certificate. But if they,
Like, I'm just thinking like normal, like a utility bill that we throw in an informational thing. Can we add it as an extra one-page piece that goes in that says, we remind you to X, Y, Z? Like the reality is here, okay, first off, we can't fix every process that's out there. We can't create everything. We have the MGA that binds what we can and cannot do. And so I'll also say that in the whole time I've been on council, like, I can tell you, this is the only one like this.
Yeah.
That I've dealt with. Like, this is a one-off.
Still
So-
85 grand.
It's still 85 grand, but here's the situation. If they would have known about it, so part of the reason that this was a one-off thing that we tried to make work back then in that day is because we had the opportunity to bring a new level of service to our community, which was the Points West facility, which was an added bonus. And so I knew that there was some risk and we took it and away we went. So let's say that everybody did everything right. Let's say that we did notify the province properly. Let's say that the lawyers did ask. Let's say that we identified it before sale. The question is if we had all that information that came to us and said, hey, a school's expanding here, we're providing more levels of service in our community, would we say too bad, so sad, or would we do this? And realistically, I think we would end up still and doing this. This process definitely needed some work. And you know, I appreciate, Lori, that you say that we share some of this. We share some of it, they
Yep.
share some of this, we should do it all differently. But if we did the process 100% correct, we
You
would
still would've
likely
got the
still have
request.
it in front of here and we would say, we're gonna make the school pay an extra $85,000 or we're gonna do it. And some would say yes, and some would say no. Realistically, I believe I would say yes in that circumstance, and I'm okay with the motion.
Yeah.
The only point I would say is that moving forward, as an additional piece of reminder, like what does it take us to create one extra piece of form information that you can use for every single one, that when a tax certificate comes out, it's a reminder, it's an added piece to say, we did our job.
we could include on the tax certificate a reminder saying, you know, don't forget to inquire about
That's all I'm saying.
contribution and levies. I mean, I don't see that being a problem. I will talk with our finance group about it, but I don't see that being an issue.
So a small recommendation there that theoretically wouldn't be hugely labor intensive, that might create an additional layer of protection and accountability.
Yeah, for this and being a school and we end up with the same result, yada, 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 that's great. But if it was not a school, we would be looking for this $85,000. We need to kind of safeguard ourselves against that.
Agreed. Like if we're talking about some business that bought land here, or whatever else, it might be having a different tone of voice on this for sure. So
And I was just gonna say that it's a new lawyer that has taken over some of the existing practices. So I know whenever you take over a new business, that sometimes they may have missed this depending on the time of year that they took it over. And I know some of the staff had changed out, so might be worth resending some of that information.
agreed.
At some point
you know,
now,
so
'cause it's new
there's a lot
this
of
year.
things that could be done differently, but at the end of the day, it's a school. I can live with it. Don't love it, but I can live with it. Further discussion, Counselor Adams.
No, I'm ready for the motion. I forgot you put the motion
made
out
a motion.
already.
Okay.
My fault.
Okay, any further discussion? Motion is on the floor. Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. We're in the mayor's corner already here. So I will say that a couple of things. I'll let these guys come back here. So just a mayor's corner real quick. First off, I just want to say a big congratulations to the Tourism Society, the Chamber of Commerce, to all the non-for-profit groups that jumped up and stepped up to put on the all-in event. And so as usual, literally hundreds to thousands of people, not hundreds of thousands, but hundreds to thousands, lined the streets for the parade. They were down to the block party. We had lots of vendors. There was lots of buzz. People were out and about, and that's what it's all about. And that doesn't happen easy. It happens because people like literally roll up their sleeves and get the job done. And I just want to say thanks to all those that participated, the businesses who are all feeling the crunch of, I don't have enough staff and I don't have enough people, but I'm still going to make this work because it's a good community thing. I just want to say, you know, you guys did an amazing job as always. Man, I keep getting tons and tons of feedback about the beach that it's never looked better. Not only from our residents, but from tourists, people that are coming through the stores and hearing it from people that are going through the campgrounds and coming to the restaurants. Wow, your beach is amazing. And so we can say whatever we want about economic development, but you know, economic development is this overarching strategy. It's a thing with logos. It's a thing with branding. It's a thing with what we're posting, and it's the things that we're working with organizations and buying equipment and changing our philosophies to be an organization, to be a community that says, yeah, we're here, we're open for business, we want you to come. And council's whole vision, our whole mission, our whole strategic plan is built around the fact that we want people to know that we're here. We want people to take notice. We want people to show interest. We want people to come. And those people that come, we want them to visit. We want them to think about working in Slave Lake. We want to think about being a part of Slave Lake. We want business people to think about starting businesses in Slave Lake. I think these are all good things. Lots of feedback from campgrounds, hotels, that's seeing some of the busiest traction that they've ever seen this summer. So I think, you know, I think what we're doing is working. That being said, there's also a lot of discussion about a new logo, and we threw out a new logo and some people like it and some people think we're out to lunch. So let's talk about that for a second. So first off, I will say that, well, why do we do that? And so part of it about talking about who we are is making sure that the conversation as we move forward in this economic development, promotion and branding and marketing, that we have an identity, and part of that identity is built around our logo. It's one piece. It's not the whole piece. It's one piece. And so the feeling from council and the 30 some different organizations and individuals that we talked to in the months previous before we jumped onto a new logo said, you know, that's one of the things there that I've identified that, yeah, it is kind of old and it's tired, and what can we do differently? We haven't invested in new highway signage for 10 years. For 10 years, it comes to budget almost every year, and we say, no. Part of it comes from, are we sure that this is a logo that we want? This is the image that we want? Is this the message that we want? And so we're moving in a new direction, and some people are going to love it and some people are going to hate it. I will be the first to say that, typically in the past, I do a lot of videos, I do a lot of vlogs, and I communicate the crap out of stuff to say this is what we're doing and where we're going, what we should do. And I'll be the first to say that I could have done a better job up there to get that message out. And we're going to be playing catch up behind the scenes as we move forward from council. But I'm excited about the fact that we're heading somewhere. We're heading in a new direction. People are taking notice, visitors are taking notice, and our residents are taking notice. And a logo is only one part of that. I also want to talk about let's talk about healthcare for a second as an example. One person makes a big difference in the town of Slave Lake. When a doctor retires, when a nurse is no longer working at the hospital, these have big impacts in smaller rural communities on the level of service that we can provide to our residents. And I can tell you that a lot of things we're doing in economic development and promotion or whatever is about finding a number of one persons. We are in somewhat of a crisis situation in our hospital. And it's not really out there as a topic, but it's something to talk about, that literally province-wide, there is a huge shortage of nurses working in hospitals. We have hospitals in our neighborhood that are literally closed. We have hospitals that are basically to open, we're staffed 24/7, but don't come at night because we actually can't look after you. And so we're in running into our own critical shortages here that we're having to use contractors and locum support to get by. But I can tell you, we need to attract people, we need to find people, and part of what we're doing is part of that. But I think as we move forward as a community, we need to understand too that we need to retain every person that we have, because we're on the brink of a situation where service levels change when you do not have enough people. Like, we can say we deserve it, we can say we need it, we can say we want it, we can tell everyone that we have to have it, we can cry to the ministers, but realistically, if they can't find people, like, isn't a Slave Lake unique situation, it is going to affect service levels. And so I really too bring it up as a point to the public to say, the messages too that you share, your frustrations that you share in the public, goes to the people that live here. And those people have to decide, am I in a field where I feel like I'm supported, or am I in a field where I feel like I'm thrown under the bus all the time? And so our conversations matter. And to that end, we're looking at things internally too about how we engage with residents, because this previous exercise with logo is a prime example of how can we better include engagement? How can we better get feedback? But it also has to be meaningful. It has to be impactful. It has to have a positive effect of moving the whole organization and the community forward. Because realistically, if the approach is just to light everything on fire and throw darts at each other, it really doesn't accomplish that. And so there are better tools to use. And so we're looking at that as an organization about how we better support the community in moving things forward, because realistically, that's our job. That's what we're supposed to be doing. That's the expectation of residents. And so I think you're going to see us looking at new options. I think you're going to see us investing in new technology. I think you're going to see us trying new things to better engage, better get feedback, and get a positive voice out there, because a positive voice is what a community needs to keep people and grow. Lastly, I will say summer is over. I don't know if that's official. Can we say that or not? But, realistically in September, in my household, I was excited about the return to routine, because summer's fun for a while, but routine is something I can make on and plan my life around. And so there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes with council now as we jump into things like budget, like reviewing our strategic plans, and just charting a path forward. There's a lot of holidays and things that come during the summer, and so things are going to get busy. And so I appreciate council, although we had a break from some of our meetings, there was still a lot going on. And when it wasn't going on, you guys were rolling up your sleeves to deal with, homelessness and community resource council and tourism events and chamber of commerce and whatever you had to do. So you might not hear it from the public as many times as you should, but I appreciate everything you guys are doing, because I think you do a hell of a job. So with that, those are the most powerful mirrors corner I could give you on this Tuesday night. We have a number of items to talk about in closed session here tonight. that deal with all kinds of variety of topics that I can't talk about at the moment, but I look forward to continuing to work with a great organization. I look forward to getting more feedback from residents, and I look forward to growing and moving this community forward. With that, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Any discussion? Call the question. Those